Should have put on track shoes because I've got to give you 2 sermons today and I've got to condense it. And I'm going to actually try to make it shorter than my other sermons. It's not true, I'm not. But I'm going to do my very they're visiting. I know. But this is a race. And I was compelled as I saw the sermon you're going to get after the first sermon is actually, it needed a little bit of setup. So I'm going to move very quickly here. In the passage that I just read to you, Jesus is giving this story. And his disciples are gathered around, and of course with Jesus being the rock star that he is, other people are gathered as well. And Jesus begins to say, hey guys, I want you to imagine the master of a house. And if there's a master of a house, there's servants. And whether those are hired servants or whether they are slaves, there are servants that are there. And if the master says, I'm going to a wedding banquet, I'll be back later. The house is not left dark. It isn't abandoned. It's not like, well, while the cat's are away, the mice will play. They should, as evening falls, remember, a lot of these weddings can last quite late. He says they're probably going to trim their lamps. They're going to be ready. So when the master comes, they can walk right into the house. It's going to be bright, vibrant. Everything can be taken care of. And he said it would be terrible for the master to return and it just be full of darkness. So I need you to be ready. I need you to be ready for the master's return. And the disciples are like, okay, this isn't just a story. And they interrupt him to say, this is interesting. Because I'm sure they're used to him just monologuing. You know, I see Jesus at any given time having a teachable moment. And they stop him and they say, Master, just for the record, is this for us you're telling this? Are you referring to you as... I mean, I love the fact they wanted clarity. Is this about us and you? Or are you telling this to the world? And he's like, yes. You can make all application to this. It's about just being ready to do what you need to do. And he goes all the way down and he says, the servant who knows his master's will and does not get ready and does not do what his master wants, I'll tell you what will happen to him. That person will be beaten. He's not condoning it. He's not saying that's what should happen. He's making social commentary. But he's also saying that the one who is supposed to do what they're supposed to be doing and doesn't do it, there's punishment. Now that's a heavy lesson right there. And he continues on, and I think these men are almost a little frightened, a little weird. But then he says, you know what? To whom much has been given, much who has been entrusted, then much will be asked. Now, when you hear that, I'm not hearing slave anymore. I'm hearing servants who no longer have to live in the house down by the way. You're now in the master's house. You're now going to have your own room. You're going to have good food. You're going to have good wine. You're going to be allowed to be here. Do you ever remember watching the Brady Bunch?
Yes.
You know, they restored the Brady Bunch house. Because that facade used to just be, you know, if you've ever been to Hollywood and taken the tour of famous houses, there are those that are on the back lot, and then there are real houses that they just filmed. And by the way, after 45 years, the Poltergeist house is up for sale.
Oh.
You remember the movie Poltergeist? It was about a neighborhood where they built all these new houses, and they built it over a cemetery, but they never moved the bodies. So right there at the high point of the new neighborhood, it all becomes haunted, and that's the movie. And I hope you get to see it at some point because it's worth it. That house is for sale. So go back to the Brady Bunch house.
Are you going to buy it?
I would love to have that house. That would be so cool. Huh?
Are the bodies still there?
No, they didn't really build it that way. This is what... We've got guests.
Inquiring minds want to know.
The inquiring minds want to know. So I want you to go back to the Brady Bunch.
Okay.
We kind of took it as, here's this blended family. There's 6 kids all together, the husband and the wife. They had Alice. She was a main character right there in the center. Here's a story. right there, she's in the center, and she really did hold that house together. It set an unrealistic standard that every day when I arrive at home, somebody's going to have cleaned the house and made all the food.
Yeah,
Taken
right.
care of the pets, helped with the kids. Wouldn't that be wonderful if, and you know, there's all of these tech folks right now that say within just a very few short years, all of us are going to have robots in the house. If they can clean up cat litter, if I can come home and the dishes are done, I wouldn't know what to do if a robot was mowing my lawn when I came. I would kiss that thing square on the forehead. The reality is, if you were within the household in ancient times and you had something as crazy as running water, or you had a private bathroom, the Romans were fantastic with the aqueducts of moving water. Unfortunately, they used lead pipes, so that's a whole other issue. We'll go into ancient history later, but just go with the concept that you have water moving nearby. If you've seen the Roman toilets of ancient times, it could be a room about half this size. The floors were heated, but unfortunately it was bench seating, and you were about 2.5 to 3 feet apart from other people. But they were delighted that underneath there was moving water, and it was very sanitary. But imagine having the ability to have something like that in your home. Whether it was moving water or somebody to take care of it for you by the removal. See, we don't think about it because in a few minutes we're going to go to lunch. There's just things that we take for granted, the transportation to get here. And if you are going to be in ancient times, to be in a place that had the best of the best gave you at least a little bit longer life and maybe a better one. So Jesus is saying, say you're one of the servants. You're in the house. You're not a slave. You have access. You've been given much. Then much will be required. Can you imagine inviting someone into your home and you give them all the hospitality? You come home and you don't charge rent. You don't require anything of them, but you give them access to everything. You come home and they've never, ever, not once touched the vacuum cleaner for you.
That sounds like a kid.
Yes, I'm describing parenting. And the dishes are all dirty. The clothes are piled up. At some point, you would be worn out. And they would have worn out their welcome. And it would not be inappropriate to have a conversation with someone and say, you know, I'm giving you a lot. Can you help me? But if somebody's job is servant, and the master's going out to a party, we have access to the house. You don't have to do anything other than keep the lamps burning so when I'm home, I don't walk into darkness. Jesus gives that analogy, and his disciples need to realize that when Jesus returns, we as his disciples, the message to them immediately, keep doing what you're doing, you get to be at the feet of Jesus, but also to us today, is that when the Master returns, he should not be returning to darkness. How are we doing? It's a pretty dark world. Do you know why I think aliens have not made themselves known? They're scared. I think they fly by Earth and it's like seeing the Stuckies in the middle of nowhere. They're like, keep driving. You know, just roll up the windows, lock the doors.
Keep going.
Anybody remember Stuckies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Many years ago, if you were traveling across this country, Stuckies was a good place to stop. And then at some point, it wasn't. We've all seen gas stations that even though your car has pegged the E, you just keep driving. Because it's just like, nope, I'm not getting out of my car here. I wonder if Earth is like that. Because you look down at it right now, and we are in one of the most, believe it or not, one of the most peaceful times in the history of the world. If you had to fall into the need of medical care, is there any other time other than now you would like to go to, other than the future? Would you like to go back 10 years ago? 20, 30, 50? I miss the good old days. Ah, yes. Civil War surgeons. Let's go back to that right now, because everything got amputated. That's all they needed to do. Let's put leeches on you. We live in one of the best times, well, the best time in the history of the world. When somebody says, I couldn't imagine bringing children in a world like this. What time would you like to bring them into the world? Malaria and polio, is that a good time for children? The Black Plague? Ah, yes. No, this is a wonderful time in history. You're in the best time ever. What's the song from the Carousel of Progress, cousin?
Oh, gosh.
Anybody?
Oh.
Disney fans? This is the time. This is the best time. This is the best time of your life.
Yeah.
It's a Carousel of Progress. It starts. What? Do you not go? Do you get out of the house at all? You ever see the Muppet Show? You know the little puppets that are up in the theater just constantly heckling?
The peanut gallery. I call it the peanut gallery.
I know. No, you're good. In the Carousel of Progress, you see different eras from American history, and each time that people are singing the song, this is the best time of your life. And then each time you see how the discoveries, the technology, everything has helped make our world better. Jesus says, I've left all of this. You're in the Master's house. Much has been given to you. Don't you understand that much is required? This is heavy words, but I believe the state of the world is the church's fault. It's heavy, hear me out. Right now, it's so easy to want the government to legislate morality. Now mind you, we've got to have rules, we've got to have everything in place, but there's so much that the church should have been doing. We've missed our mark to getting out to a lost and dying world. Right now, the majority of the wealth in the world is in the hands of people. It's over 90% of the wealth of the world is in the hands of people who claim a strong religious background. And then we look to the government to say, why haven't you solved world hunger? Why doesn't everybody in the world have clean water? What if God ever looks at us and goes, how much more would they receive your message if it was brought with food and water? Because every time Jesus spoke, it seems like he was turning water to wine. He was doing a miracle of giving bread and fish. He was always meeting their need. And the religious world, and I'm really not talking about you today. I'm really not. This is not a pointed at you. I think you do a wonderful job. But there are churches that will spend more on their gymnasiums than they will to feed the hungry. And we won't talk about, we will not discuss the charlatans. That's a whole other, I mean, yes, you know that there are multi-millionaire preachers. And I don't hold any ill if they've done it legitimately. I mean, there are some that we can name right now that literally take no money from the church and they have earned it by being an author. Okay. But much is given to you. What are you doing with it? And that's going to be a point in just a second, so I'm going to come back to you. There's your first sermon. Much has been given, what are you going to do with it? It sends us out, because if you think about the people in the first century who took the message to the known world, what are we doing? How are we being? Who and what we need to be? There's sermon one. We're not doing too bad. Now I want you to, if you want to write it down, if you want to look it up later, it comes from the book of James. And in the middle of this, James is writing and he says, listen. And this is from chapter 4. He says, now listen. Those of you who say, today or tomorrow I will go to this city and that city and I'll spend a year or two in that city and I'll carry on business and I'll make money. And he's talking about people making all of these plans for their world. But God's not in the middle of the plans. And he says, why do you do that? Why, you don't even know what will happen tomorrow. You're ready to announce everything you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and you forget that you can't do a thing if God didn't let you. That's a heavy concept. The But follow me just for another moment. He says, what is your life? And this verse will sound familiar. It is merely a vapor, here for a moment, then gone. In other words, he's making a warning about boasting of all that you're going to do. Okay, it's probably the nature of man to be a little boastful. And I imagine that probably the titans of business have a lot of braggadocio of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. But he says, I want you to walk with caution. Because as you're announcing all that you're going to do and all that your life is fulfilling, I will remind you it's just a vapor, it's fragile, and you're only here for a moment. What does it take to get a vapor off the top of a pot that's just blow on? The vapor moves away. If you see a mist on a lake and a wind comes down and it clears away and now it's crystal clear. He says that's how delicate life is. So before you go around, man, and does man ever get boastful? Does he ever get full of himself? Do we as a species ever just get full of ourselves?
Yes.
We do. And it becomes all about us. Get all you can. Can all you get. Sit on the lid. It's all mine. I do not, for a single moment, by the way, the Bible doesn't say that the money is the root of all evil. It says, and I quote, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Because let's face it, if there was not folks out there that had something, then there's nobody to help give it away. I don't deny anybody their success, but if much has been given to you, much is required. I don't think it's a sin for somebody to be stinking rich. We all dream about it, but I'm going to wager if I know you, if somehow they showed up and that the prince in Africa who's been trying to reach you by email, you know the one that's like all you got to do is respond? What if he really existed and then you suddenly got $100 million? You're all a lot of headache, wouldn't it be? Yeah. But let's just say if you did have it, would you keep it, would you hoard it, or would you do good with it?
Do good.
Oh, everybody I know is getting a piece of the pie. I fantasize about it. That somehow I know so many people in need. And one of the things I do, I'm going to tell you a little secret in counseling. Having done counseling for 35, 38 years, one of the questions I ask people, I ask couples this, I ask individuals this, because they'll come up with problems. And one of the things I'll stop and ask is, if I wrote you a check for $1 million, would it make things better? Most of the time, the answer is yes. Hear me out, because what they're having, and sometimes when relationships are really tough, well, here's a couple, they're struggling, there's all these things are going on. If I gave you $1 million, would it make it better? No, it would not. Then now let's go to your issue. If the answer is yes, then you're having a money problem. Do you realize how many folks fight about money?
A lot.
I can't believe my health, blah, 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 blah. This is the situation. If I gave you $1 million, oh, then yes, you have a health issue. But the problem is, how do we get the money to treatment? How do we get you to the clinic Teresa, you had an issue with your health. If you came to me and said, oh my goodness, my back is killing me. I don't know what to do. I'm in the worst pain ever. Would $1 million help? What kind of treatment could you have gotten with $1 million?
A lot quicker.
You have a health issue. I know to deal with that, but part of the solution is, and you had she had a treatment that was very expensive that she had to pay for out of pocket for her back. And it took a hot minute to figure out. You got to look at everything from house and finances and world, because could putting yourself in a financial stress cause other problems? You better believe it. Well, what if I lose the house or the car? Or what about our relationship? We're all going to have to work twice. Sometimes money does solve problems. It's not always the answer, but understand why the question is asked. Because it's one of the first ways I know, how can I help you? Well, I've become homeless, or I have this situation. I want to know is money one of the ways that puts a Band-Aid or stitches up the wound? Because that's one of the things we can find. And sometimes when it is a health issue, it is finding the doctor, the treatment on the far side of the world. We finally found it. There's a doctor in Germany. What are you going to need to get there? I didn't make these rules. I didn't make this planet. But sometimes the solution is money. I'm thankful that there are people out there that are generous when those that don't have access because of those that do. Now, this goes back to what you made comment on just a moment ago. I want to tell you the story of two multi-millionaires. One is a friend, and the other I know. And I won't mention names, though I want to really bad. The two families don't know each other. They live in Daytona Beach, and over the years, they have become very wealthy. One of those families, you will find their name on almost every chair. The Francis have been very generous, not who I'm referring to. They've been very generous. But a lot of the stuff is on their buildings. But they've also been very charitable to the hospitals. NASCAR, welcome to Daytona. If you don't know it, you will hear it soon enough, because the races, you can get anywhere you want to if you stay away from the racetrack at the right time. You won't know 500,000 people are in town. Like the motorcycles. If you know where to go and not go, you'll be fine. I'm thankful for Francis. And I will tell you some folks who are incredibly generous. The Lowes.
Yeah.
They've had a series of funeral homes, and they've done very well. But you'll notice an entire wing of the Humane Society. That beautiful new building. Taking care of those little puppies, those little kittens. They can't get a thing back to them. But they did it. The planetarium. And then, and I won't even talk about what that took. There is a museum in Ormond. An entire wing has been put on. And I cannot even begin to tell you of their generosity. Much has been given, much has been given. But they give back a lot. Does my heart good. And I don't think anybody that knows them would deny them a single thing. Because it's one of those of, wow, that's, if you're going to have it, that's the way to do it. I will not mention, though I really want to.
Don't do it.
I'm not. They had some very, very successful businesses. In fact, their names were everywhere. You won't know them because their names are easily forgotten. If I describe their businesses, what they did, what they accomplished, you would go, oh my goodness, yes. There were several siblings in that family. And two were despised. One who never had much lived a quiet life until he left this world. Those that did were hated because they amassed great wealth, and they were invited to every charitable event, they were invited to everything, and it was always no. Even to the place they worshipped, when money was needed, it was a no. And I remember having a conversation with one of them, and it was just like, hey, what are you going to do with it all? And it was basically, God entrusted us with this, and we're going to sit on it until we die, and then it'll be distributed how we so choose. You got people in your family that lives to be 100. You're just going to sit on it. And you know what? They didn't spend it on their house. In fact, if you were to look at their world, you would never know they had it. They don't spend it on their family. They don't spend it on their kids. They don't spend it on themselves. It is locked away. Not mine. I don't want it. But for some reason, that bothers me. Am I wrong there for just being a little put off by it? Because there is so much, and here's the word. I once did this at a youth rally, and by the way, I'll let you in on a secret since it's been, well, 37 years. I went to the bank and said, how much do I need to hand you of a $100 bill for you to give me a new one? They said you have to have 51% of a dollar bill, or a 50, or 100, and we'll give you a new one if something happens to it. Well, using a little bit of palm magic of being able to swap it out, I took a $100 bill in front of 500 teenagers, and I walked around with it and said, who wants it? And I said, oh, the kids are up. You know, it was crazy back then. You know, you could buy a house for $100. Anyway, we were going off about the money. Everybody's looking at it. Everybody's hooping and hollering. And I said, if somebody can call out a good reason for me to give it to you, I'll give it. What would you buy? And it was, I would buy a brand new set of video games. I would buy clothes. I'd buy roller skates. I'd buy a bicycle. And then somebody said, I would give it to the needy. And everybody's like, oh, he's going that route. Knowing if you said it, you're probably going to have to do it. I said, would you really? Because, yeah, I would find needy people. I'd find hungry people. I would do something good with it. That's amazing. That's amazing. Then I lit it on fire. Much to the screams and yells and even shock of adults who were like, hey, hey, hey! And at the last moment, I palmed it out to a $1 bill that the audience could not see, and I burned it to a cinder. I'm dramatic, but I'm not stupid. I'm going to take that back to the bank and get a new one. An illegal act, by the way, of destroying American currency. My apologies, but the statute of limitations is passed, and I can tell the story. And those kids flipped out. And I said, you're more upset about a $100 bill that goes up in flames. Why? Because of all the potential that's locked in it. It is a new bike, it is new clothes, it is new video games, or it is feeding the hungry or giving it to the poor. And it's all lost because it's potential wasted. And I want to tell you that your young lives have so much potential. Do not waste it. By the way, that's the third sermon. Just you mark that down. You don't have to come to church for like a whole month by the time I'm done. It's just sermon after sermon. Not referring to the YouTube. You can catch up. Gotta catch up. It's a dramatic illustration of how much potential is lost. And I saw it magnified in those two families that both were given much. And I can tell you, and don't try to make a biblical principle on this, I'm just going to state a fact, because I do not do prosperity preaching. But I can tell you that those who have been wealthy in my story, who gave so much away, what do you suppose happened?
They got it back.
Much more kept coming back. What they have set up to do, to give away what they've got, is remarkable. This family over here has fallen into obscurity, bad health, a bad name in the community. And to my knowledge, from what insight I have to them, they pretty much, outside of what you can get out of a CD or a money market, haven't gained much more than what they got when the wealth came to them. They're changing the city, and for some individuals, the world. Their whole world. Not so much here. So let's round out the second sermon, since I gave you 1 and 3. He says, you can boast about tomorrow all you want, but there's an evil to it, because it keeps talking about what you're going to do and what you're going to accomplish. It's you, and you're leaving God out of the picture. And he says, that's why I'm going to tell you your life is like a vapor. Don't talk about all that you're going to do. Instead, you ought to say, this is heavy. If it's the Lord's will, I'll go and do it. and we'll live, and we'll do this, or we'll do that. Literally, that's what he says, or we'll do this, or we'll do that. As it is, you boast and brag, people. This is James writing. And he says, all of that kind of boasting is evil when it's all about you. Now, here's the last sermon. Anyone then who knows the good he ought to do and doesn't do it, sins. That's so heavy. That verse haunts me. I wish I hadn't read it, because I now see glimpses of good all the way around me. And it's difficult to just drive by when I know there's a bit of good that I can do. There are times when I'm tired and I don't want to take the call. Suddenly he or she is calling again. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm laying in my comfy bed with a little remote that can raise my head because I have a little acid reflux. Am I really going to sit there on my down pillows and not answer the phone? I'm sitting back watching Netflix at 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm eating a little bag of M&Ms with a cat at my feet. Am I really the one at that moment to say how put out I am? Oh, I may not have a yacht. I got running water. I may not have the multi-million-dollar house, and I've got another leak in my roof. I don't know how this happens. But I do have a place that I'm comfortable. And I've not missed any meals lately. We live in a world. Is that a cough or a laugh back there? Just check. It's those moments where we live in a world where if you don't want to cook, you can go out for McDonald's. And now we're in such a world that McDonald's will deliver it to you. No, I could not imagine that there's somebody right now spending $30 to have a Happy Meal. I could not be happy if I paid $30 because somebody delivered it to them. I can count on one hand the number of times I've had somebody deliver a pizza to my house because I'm going to go get it. I'm that cheap. It costs more. Folks, we're very blessed. And you don't have to be in the upper echelon of being a millionaire or a billionaire to have something. Much has been given to us. We are living longer, better, healthier. It doesn't matter if you rent or own, you probably have a place over your head. And if you don't, there are so many places that we can help connect you to help get a roof over your head. And if you needed food, we could provide food to you and then connect you with the resources to get food. We are such a blessed society. Now, the struggle is, if I could change part of the world, I would want to be able to help improve our mental health, because a lot of times homelessness comes from mental health issues or addiction issues, and those tied together, we can change the world if we address that. James is putting a heavy burden on us because we are the servants in this world. And right now it is full of darkness, and the majority of the wealth of the world falls into the hands of religious people. And it's not going to be by your vote. I don't know when the last time the government ever fixed anything. And if you rely on them, would you rather have the government retirement, or would you rather have wished, hoped, whatever, that back in the day you could have had it invested and it would have been in your control? One of the things that drives me crazy is whatever I've put into Social Security, if I keel over at 60,
Goes away.
it disappears. How do I build any sort of wealth to help take care of my kids or to pass on to my grandkids? Is that a political commentary? No, it's just, it all passes away. So when it's in our hands right now, what can we do? How can we help? There are people out there in need, and sometimes they just need somebody to sit down with them for a moment. Sometimes the generosity, remember, our life is like a vapor. Here for a moment, then gone. Have you ever just been too tired to talk, but you found a way to sit down for a moment and be a listening ear? In the death and dying world, when grief comes, part of what I do is grief counseling. Do you think I schedule those appointments? Sometimes.
No.
Have you ever tried to schedule somebody's grief?
No.
Oh, you need to have a talk out cry session. Can we put that Thursday at 2? That's going to be the 1 a.m. call. Or worse, in my world, when somebody calls me at 7 a.m. By the way, if you call me at 7 a.m., do not start the call with, "Are you up?" No, I am not up at 7 a.m. If you're one of those people, God bless you, I'm not. Those are tough calls for me because I can look over, and even the cats are looking at me going, hello? That is not my voice at 7 a.m. Somebody's in need. So maybe the generosity comes with the time you're going to give. Maybe it's going to be with a heart that is compassion. Maybe it is going to be with money. Maybe it's going to be with food. Maybe it's going to be with hospitality. But all of us have something to give. And James puts the weight on it when we see that good and we don't do it. Well, Jesus said it. It's like the master who comes home and he finds the darkness. We're supposed to bring it into the light. Would you pray with me? Father God, it is a prayer of thanksgiving. We ask that you help us to see you more clearly, but not just you, the needs around us, and then to be vessels that meet those needs as you would have us. May it be your will. In Jesus' name, amen.